Hello again, YouTube, and sorry about my absence, but I've been doing some personal stuff and, just traveling around, having some fun. Just got back from the USGP, third time going to that race, and it was super awesome. Very much enjoyed it. It was a different experience because I've never sat in general admission, but being able to walk around the track and choose where I want to sit was actually pretty cool rather than having an assigned seat. And then this weekend, I will actually be going to Heltec World Cup Finals, and that'll be for the first time. And that's going to be, I have a feeling it's going to be pretty awesome, but we shall see. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a bad video of it. But to get into this, so I think I have what I want to call an achievement unlocked moment. I did something I didn't think I was capable of, and I'm not sure exactly the cause, but I'm pretty sure I have a decent idea, but I'll discuss that at the end after going through everything else. But essentially, because of that achievement unlocked, the car is now basically going to be sitting in its natural habitat on jack stands through the rest of the winter, and then hopefully come off of them for the springtime, if before that, if one of the upgrades or mods is able to come to fruition. So anyway, let's get into it. So as I've discussed all these before, but just go back into it. So the first thing would be getting at least a new driver's seat. I could get a passenger seat, but I'm not too concerned about that right now, just because at my skill level, I'm not allowed to take passengers unless they're an instructor with me. But I want to get a seat that is fixed back, just for a little bit more rigidity. This thing can actually recline. Thankfully, with the harness bar, it doesn't recline too far back, but I need to get one anyway with a fixed back. And then with that, I also need a seat that has a hole for the anti-submarine belt to be able to be used, just to add the extra security and keep me in place a little bit longer. And the biggest reason why I want to get another seat is because I went for symmetry when I bought both of these, and they're a bit too large for me. So just for now, for the driver's seat, I want to get something that's a little bit tighter so that in corners I'm not throwing myself around. It's not too much, but it's enough to notice, and definitely have to get the feet where they need to be if I do get tossed around. And then to continue with the interior, obviously I have the harness bar, as you all know, but I also think it may be coming time for a roll cage. The harness bar, I would imagine, adds a little bit rigidity, but there's not much safety. And I haven't gotten to the point where I think I would be rolling the car unless I go down a turn that's on a super decent decline, but having a roll cage in there regardless would be great for both safety and for rigidity. But in order to do that, I actually end up having to take the back portion of the back seat out, the backrest, because the only reason I have it in right now is because the fuel system and the exhaust sound that come out from the trunk area is extremely loud. Now, I love the car and its sound, but that's a bit too much for me. So if I took this out, I'd want to get a backing plate, and I think that's going to be required anyway for regardless whether it's just track days for tech inspection or for actual competition use. I'd have to have something that separates the cabin from the trunk area. But yeah, so that's that. And then I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see this, but going on to the third thing, I'm thinking about getting new rotors. Now, the rears don't look too bad, at least on this side from what I can see. However, if you go to the front, you can see that the zinc plating is coming off pretty dang well. And I just also noticed that the brake pads are getting a little bit heat treated right there, going a little bit white hot. But I'm not sure if I showed it in the last video or mentioned it, but after the second session at Carolina Motorsports Park, the rear brakes were smoking. Front ones weren't so much, At least I didn't see anything. I might have seen heat waves, but there wasn't any smoke. But the rear brakes were smoking. So I'll have to look into see if there's any viable option for upgrading rotors, or if I just need to add ducting to cool them off, get airflow into there. And third, which is probably the easiest thing, is going to be getting this sensor housing put into the upper radiator hose. So right now I'm just running off of the OEM, factory sensor, reading to the gauge cluster and to the access port if I use that monitor on the access port. And I wasn't at first, and so during VIR, obviously the cluster isn't tuned or adjusted to be able to. It's just for street driving and not for track driving. So while I was on VIR, pushing it pretty hard, I would say harder than I had before. It was going up to the third 3/4 mark, which I thought it was on the verge of overheating. So I got a little bit terrified, and then I changed the monitor on the access port, and the temperatures for coolant, both on VIR and for Carolina Motorsports Park, even though I ran it way harder, we're only getting from 212 to 220. So it wasn't anything too drastic, but again, the cluster gauge is calibrated for regular street use. So 212 is getting a bit hot for what the computer thinks is insane. So want to install that just so I have a gauge rather than having to use the access port, because in the future I do plan on using a Haltech ECU. So I want to get the gauge in there so that I have that to read off of a digital gauge. And then finally go into the achievement unlocked mark. So before going to the track, I actually had the car aligned, and it was perfectly smooth. It was good on the track, good on the road, everything. I actually had to drive it back 90 miles, which is pretty ridiculous. But that was the nearest shop that I thought had a reputation in order to do it. So anyway, it was smooth. Took it to the track. It was smooth, and I noticed a little bit of a vibration on the last session, but it wasn't too bad. And then when I got home and parked the car, let it sit for a few days, I wanted to go out and take it for a drive, so that's what I did. And that's when, after everything had cooled off and settled, the steering wheel was ridiculously violent and shaking. So I took the wheels and tires off and took them to the to Discount Tire and had them look at them, try to get them balanced. And after taking a short little break, drove away for a little bit and then came back. They were still working on them, and they were telling me there wasn't much they could do because the wheels were out of shape. I was like, you're going to have to explain this to me. So they took me to the back and showed me, and I would roll the tires down the driveway, but at such a low speed, and plus it's not a very smooth driveway, so the wheels would bump all over anyway. But on the tire machine, you could literally see the wheel shaking and the unevenness in the roll on the lip of the wheel. So, yeah, they couldn't do anything, but I told them just for the heck of it, try to balance them as best they could. It was 3 out of the 4 that were misshapen, and I have a feeling it's because of the heat, but I can't be 100% sure. Heat and the pressures of taking the corners as hard as I was going, maybe, but I couldn't tell you exactly for sure. But funny enough, and I'm not sure if this is the wheel, but this wheel is one that I looked at first. But when I asked them to balance the tires as best they could, one of the tires was reading at, I guess, 108 or 116 pounds of force, vibration when going down the road at like 40, 45 miles an hour on their machine. And the guy told me the best he could do was get me down to a 108. And I was like, well, that's curious. And then when I got home with the wheels, I noticed this one. So not only do I still have the old weights right there and then a new clip-on, but they also just stacked weights right there. So as you can tell, pretty freaking wild. But yeah, so with that said, I'm going to have to get some new wheels and tires, and those are going to be like the first things, because Obviously, the car can't go anywhere without wheels and tires. The tires, anyway, have seen more than 30 heat cycles. That's just on the track. Not sure if you can see it too well, but there's some marbling and whatnot. They're obviously rubbed pretty good, but they've had too many heat cycles in them, so it's time for new tires anyway. And now that the wheels are misshapen, you gotta get wheels as well. So that is that. But that's the update, y'all. So no more track days for, unfortunately, maybe up to a couple of months. But I will try to get her back at least on the road as soon as possible. So yeah, thanks for watching, and until next time.